Welcome, folks, to the September 20th Aries Working Group Call of 2023. Got some cool topics on the agenda today. This is a Hyperledger call, and so the antitrust policy and the Hyperledger Code of Conduct are in effect. Helps us be excellent to each other and avoid any legal issues with our work. Please mind those, and please raise any concerns that you have, and we'll continue to be getting along. The agenda link is in the chat. Feel free to add yourself to the attendees list or make any other changes that are useful to the community. Is there anyone new today that would like to introduce themselves? See lots of familiar faces, and I'm glad you're here. Announcements, the DIDCOM users group meeting, second, third, and fourth Mondays. Lots of updates to book.didcom.org and other things happening over there. October 10th and 12th is IW. We will eventually brainstorm IW topics for those that are going or those that would love to have things discussed, but not quite yet. Hyperledger Summit is after that, and October 23rd. And then this is the last meeting for the reminder for the new meeting link. The Hyperledger calendar has the updated link to the correct place. And so that's there. And Bifold regular meetings have resumed after the break. So the next meeting is on the 26th, and during its regularly scheduled time. And the Hyperledger calendar has that as well. Any other announcements that we should have, but we don't? Excellent. Any work status release or work updates for the projects inside of Aries? Stephen, can I pick on you?
Sure.
There was a presentation, I think, given by Shar about SD.
Yes,
Jots.
that's in the notes I saw it, so that's why I didn't say. But anyway, SD Jots. Actually, there's two things I should mention that have been done in PRs recently. SD Jot support was added, so you can now use Akapi to sign and verify an SD Jot with various options according to the standard. Things like defining any must disclose fields. The issuer can specify those, or and then the verifier can decide which fields to expose. So those capabilities are in Akapi now. So verify issuer holder and verify capabilities. The other thing that's there, and I imagine you're going to talk at some point about did rotate, but Daniel Bloom did a implementation within Akapi of did rotate, and so there's a work in progress PR on that. Super valuable. Really wanted to call that out in the community. One of the issues you can get into when you write protocols is not think of everything that the implementer has to worry about. And so by Daniel jumping ahead and implementing that, and then providing feedback to the protocol saying, well, I tried to implement it and here's what I ran into, which was not much. So that's good. That's super helpful to have that done before we finalize the protocol. So super good work there.
Yes, and there was some minor things. There was no changes to the protocol needed, but he surfaced a new kind of error that he wanted to report that was useful. And I'll get to that a little later when I kind of do an overview of that. But yeah. Excellent.
Patch release 0.10.2 is still pending. We ran into something not confirmed if it is an error or not. We just didn't want to rush out something if we thought there might be something lurking. So we have not put that out yet, but we'll soon. The release candidate 0 has been deployed, used, hasn't had any problems with it, barring this odd behavior we saw in one particular example that we thought we should look at.
Cool. Excellent. Any other updates folks want to share? All right. So here's what I have on the agenda today. Stephen, I bumped again push notifications in favor of Patrick's discussion.
Yeah,
Hopefully we get to this.
I don't think there's anything needed on that for now. And
Okay.
I'm not the
I do
one.
want to talk about it because I feel like we need to do some catching up there,
Okay.
but we've got a lot of other urgent stuff going on.
Yeah.
So okay.
Yep.
Very cool. So brief overview, a quick marketing update, and then Sebastian's here from Lissy to talk about the .NET framework, open wallet transition. This is an issue brought up. We have repos without maintainers listed, and so there's a variety of outcomes from this list that we want to take on. This is relevant because there's a Hyperledger election coming up, and listed maintainers, have voting rights, and so that's an important thing there. And then I have a quick update on the unqualified did stuff, or the unqualified did handling, with some progress that we've made. And then there's highlight the open task of a long-term support policy that needs to be created, and then the issue credential protocol v2 discussion points that Patrick has. Any other changes we want to make to the agenda before we get going, including rearranging or removing or whatever? All right, Alex, any specific things to share for the marketing update?
Thanks, Sam. Yes, if you could open up that first link in the first bullet there.
It's been merged.
It's happened. We've got a longer description. You scroll down there. There's some more information now, based on the content we had before, and better selling areas. That's now alive. A couple of the small fixes on that page as well. That's the main thing that happened this week. The other part is we have our monthly marketing meeting next Tuesday. And I was talking with Helen at Indicio this week about opportunities of how to better position Aries in some of the conversations it needs to be in as all the moving and shuffling happens in the world of all these solutions, from identity to everything else. So we're going to have that discussion further next Tuesday. If anyone wants to join and be part of the wider positioning of how Aries is being perceived and what could be done, what types of materials needed to better communicate its abilities and features and the great work that's being done, please join us. And there's the link to the working group there. Know that it's from me, but we're going to keep moving the materials forwards as well.
Excellent. And this is an excellent meeting for, of course, all of us to attend. But if you have folks in your organizations that are not developer oriented, but care about these projects and where they're going and how they can be leveraged, then that would be a great one to encourage them for.
And one last thing, David Boswell did ping the list serve regarding an update to the logo. His suggestion was definitely to move forward with a refresh of the logo text, because of the new kind of look and feel of Hyperledger overall. But we also have an opportunity to update the little icon as well. You can click in the bottom. Yeah. So this is sort of the minimum that we will definitely do, but we do have an opportunity to change the little icon as well to better represent the project and what it can do. So we'll also have that discussion next week at the marketing meeting. So if you or somebody on your team, a graphic design person on the team or product owner or whatever wants to join in that conversation, we would welcome input. So please join us next week.
Excellent. Cool. Definitely matching that stuff will be very cool. Thank you for raising that. Okay, anything on marketing? Anything else? Thanks, Alex and Helen, for doing so much work there to help things be represented better. Sebastian.
Yeah.
Update about
sure.
the .NET framework.
I'll take over. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm not sure if people still know that there is actually an Aries framework.NET. It was quite a nice framework, which was which implemented pretty much all the protocols of the Aries Interop Profile 1.0. And we at Lissi actually used it for implementing our Lissi wallet. Esatus, another company also here from Germany, they used it for implementing their Esatus wallet. And currently the two of us are the remaining maintainers, and I think also the only remaining stakeholders at the moment for this code base. With the publishing of the architecture reference framework for European Digital Identity Wallet last year, especially with Lissi, but also with the whole ID Union Consortium in Germany, we kind of shifted our focus quite strong, and now are kind of all in with the standards defined within the architecture reference framework. And that's mostly the reason why Esatus and we from Lissi decided that it makes sense to move the repository from the Aries organization to the Open Wallet Foundation, so that we can, that our focus on implementing OpenID for VC as credential exchange protocols and also SDJets as credential formats is actually visible to everyone. And we are currently, I wouldn't say not interested. I'm still interested in the Aries protocols and also DITCOM, but currently it's not a focus of our developments. And so I think the transfer is kind of reasonable. And I just wanted to take the chance here to mention that and make everyone aware of that. I can also post a proposal for the Open Wallet Foundation in the chat if someone is interested in that. From my discussions with different people here, also with you, Sam and Stephen, I think the idea is currently to kind of archive or bring the Aries project into a read-only mode, and then actually create a new repository on the Open Wallet Foundation with the code contributed from us, Lissi, and also Esatus. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm open for questions if there are some. If not, also fine.
Any questions for Sebastian?
Just a question of clarification, I guess. So if I understood you correctly, the suggestion is to basically archive the existing .NET Aries framework repo and create a new one in the Open Wallet Foundation where there is new code being added to support, for instance, OpenID for VC and the such, to be better aligned with the ARF. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the idea.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? So a couple things. This is the first code base within the Aries sort of umbrella, or bearing the Aries name proper, to make a transition like this. So there's a couple things worth highlighting. And a lot of these things came up in discussion before. Number one, the most important thing is that the work happens to move it forward in implementing of the desired technologies. That's regardless of location of where a code base is, that's the number one goal of everyone involved that I've kind of ever talked to. Number two, whatever transition is done, it's desirable to maintain commit history when a code base is moved between organizations. So there's a couple ways to do that. One is to have a fork there and then sort of archive the original. You can also move the project itself. And if you do so, GitHub works out the forward links, so that if you have an old link to the project, that it goes to the new place. And so that's the desirable thing, is to sort of maintain continuity. If a fork is done, that then becomes sort of the original main there. If you do a proper fork, then it's going to maintain a thing at the top that kind of indicates that it is a fork of the original one, which points back to the repo. So there's a couple different ways to do it, but no matter how it happens, the absolute goal is to maintain the commit history of the repository and the contributions of those that have come before, and as well as sort of maintain understanding with what's going on. So prior to, for example, an Aries repo being archived, if that's the strategy that's taken instead of a transition, then we need to make sure that the README is updated with clear links, so that people can move that, and then we can archive the repo itself so that we don't have a sort of a split brain scenario, no further work happens there. It's also, of course, worth noting that all the licenses are such that code developed anywhere can be used anywhere else within the scope of what we're talking about. And so there's still opportunities to consume libraries or to use stuff that's developed in other places, and along kind of the same way that we have previously. So there's no problem with that at all. And of course, it's whether a code base moves or not is up to the maintainers of that specific code base. There's a variety of reasons why it might be of interest or not to change organizations. And the important thing is that the maintainers and active contributors of a code base are involved in the decision to in fact execute that and make that happen. And that's the most important thing, because the most important thing is that the work continues in the easiest way possible to move the grander work forward. Any questions, thoughts, comments?
Sam, my thought on this one is it's a little different because there's only been a handful of commits made to this repo in the last 2 years, 3 years. I look back at the history and this hasn't been from an Aries perspective, inside Aries, like the actual repo hasn't been updated in quite a while. So I wonder about the idea of transferring it. That's why I suggested it just be archived and a new one be created, because if you're not using the same protocols, you're not using the same mechanisms, it seems questionable to say it's the same project even.
Well, for sure. And my comments were more
that's
general.
Why I
in this
thought the
specific
idea
project.
of taking Sebastian taking the latest code that Lissy has and moving it over, as opposed to the Aries one, just because the Aries one hasn't been touched in so long.
No, and I should have clarified. My comments were more generic in nature.
Yes.
This is a little bit different. This is a little bit different in the sense that that it has the history you described. But most of our repos have more activity than that. Although we're about to discuss some that don't. So so that was sorry. I should have qualified that a little bit better.
So actually, for me, I'm completely indifferent with regard to this. Also, my biggest goal is kind of to just preserve the commit history. How we are doing that is actually, I'm fine with both approaches, archiving or transferring completely. I just thought that, when you completely transfer it, so that it's kind of completely removed from the Aries organization, then I don't know, people will not find it anymore, or at least maybe someone is looking for it and then it's wondering why it's not there anymore. But I could also think that's not many people that are affected by this. So and
archiving it means it's still there. So
okay.
And as Sam said, if you transfer it, it still resolves. So
it kind of, I think both things solves. I think the thing that makes the most sense for the project going forward, for example, if the code that you're going to contribute is substantially different than what's currently there, then I don't think there's a problem there. And I do think that before we archive, if it's a comment added to the README would be useful for people that discover it and wonder what happened, right? And so a comment made to the Aries.NET framework that will be archived, I think, prior to archiving would be useful.
I mean, the thing is, of course, we're contributing new code, especially with regard to the STJOTs and the OpenID implementations. But there's also quite a lot of code that we're building on top that goes back to Trinsic, for example. And so I kind of want to preserve at least these contributions there.
Yes, and so The main goal is to preserve the commits. The precise mechanism, I think, is a lot less important. So yeah, and if you do need a repo moved, the person to help with that is Rai.
Yeah.
Rai Jones within the Hyperledger is also working with the Open Well Foundation, so he's familiar with both and would be able to facilitate a repository move from one or the other, or if there's any other changes that you need to be made to facilitate that, like archiving the repo or anything else, then Rai is the Hyperledger contact that enables that to happen.
Yeah, I already talked to him.
Excellent.
Excellent.
Go
Just
ahead,
a quick,
yeah.
just a quick question in terms of announcing this. Would this need to be something that we put a note on, the main wiki page, or I don't know, what would be best practice in terms of just communicating this to anybody who's not on this call?
I don't think much is necessary. I think the OWF announcement is there, and as we say, this has been sort of a languishing framework that hasn't been updated in quite a while. So I don't think anyone's using it, or very many people are using it still. So I think, other than just sort of archiving the references on the wiki and things like that, for .NET Framework and what was previously called Aries Max, that's about all that's needed.
Okay.
Yep. Clesio, your hands up.
Just one question. As it moves to Open Wallet Foundation, what happens to the users' interactions meetup? Does it still sort of report to the Aries group, or how does it user interaction is going to work? Is it the dev interactions?
You mean like user groups and things like that?
Yeah, user group meetup.
Haven't been for several years. There's never really been any for Aries Framework.net.
Most of the .NET activity existed before we had separate calls for the different code bases.
Yeah.
Back when there was just the one Aries call.
As I've heard, they're going to continue to update. Are we gonna lose line of sight, or are we still gonna be hearing about them on this meeting?
I think there's options there. I think that cross-reporting would be useful, whether it's with this meeting or some other mechanism, so that we can kind of be aware of progress that's being made, etc. That might be useful for other efforts within OWF as well. And so that's certainly an opportunity we have in front of us. We don't have an answer yet because this is kind of the first time something like this has happened. So I definitely think that like some larger cross reporting could be really useful there, but I'm unsure of the right mechanism to do that. We used to, back when this call was 90 minutes, we had the first section was a lot of cross reporting from other types of calls and everything else. And then when we moved back to 60 minutes, that was one of the things that changed as part of that transition, is we no longer spent as much time talking about the peripheral information.
Okay. Yes.
So,
TBD then.
yeah, like we can do whatever we need to, and very open to suggestions there, right? About the right way to do it. Does it deserve a specific mention? Are there other sorts of mechanisms where, we can quickly click a link and see what the most recent meeting notes are? Other types of things like that. Sure, yes. Any of those things are possible. We just need to sort of figure it out as that happens. And Sebastian, as that transition is made, if you have ideas on how to best do that as well, then that would be really useful to hear.
Yeah. So the thing is, as I said, currently I think there are only two stakeholders there: Isatus and we from Lissy. So the idea to bring it over to OWF is also to increase the people interested in this framework. And I also our intention is also to provide an SDJ library, for example, for .NET. So maybe we will create some community call within the Open Wallet Foundation with regard to the framework at some point, if there more people interested in that, but I'm not sure how this will play
I
out.
suspect there's going to be a lot of movement over the next bit on this particular topic,
Hmm.
the sort of the cross information reporting topic as OWF sort of comes into more full operation. It kind of has existed in the idea state for a while, and now it's kind of finally moving on a little bit. And so I suspect that there'll be further topics along these lines. Okay, thank you, Sebastian. And we'll work and figure things out as we have the opportunity to. So Rai brought up the missing maintainers, and so I thought it was worth kind of going through and quickly identifying what we wanted to do with a handful of these. For example, Aries Max here is the one, Mobile Agent Xamarin, which is a great acronym. But there's that. The main Aries repo is only really used to sort of host working group information. There's not actually any code there. So I think, Stephen, probably you and I should be maintainers there.
Sure.
This is black. This is like gray and it's hard to see. I'll fix that in a second. A handful of other ones. Aries Toolbox hasn't been updated for a while. And so we had talked about what to do there. Some of the thoughts were replacing useful pieces of the toolbox with other tools. There's a little bit of effort. I'm looking at Daniel Bloom's way. There's a little bit of effort going on that direction already. And so I think this may be one that could be archived. Any thoughts on archiving the toolbox? Daniel Bloom has a thumbs up. I think we can archive that. Also, Mobile Agent Xamarin. This is linked to, of course, the .NET discussion. Any thoughts on?
I definitely think we should. Yeah, that should be archived because it's had even less attention. So yeah.
Yeah, it was actually donated as a project no longer being used by the original contributor, not really an active project, and so it kind of never really grew much forward progress. We also have Bifold now, which is kind of where the attention has gone from a multi-platform solution there. So Mobile Agent Test Harness,
Sheldon,
who's the right maintainer?
Sheldon Regular should definitely be there.
What's his last name?
Regular.
Okay.
For sure, and probably a couple of others. Clesio, you probably should be a good person on that, maybe.
Specifically, this doesn't really add you any additional responsibilities. It's just a recognition of participation.
Now there is a list of responsibilities for maintainers.
Is there?
It's in the maintainers document.
It is in the maintainers document. You're right. So maybe this just formalizes what's been happening already. Is that a fairer way to say it? Okay.
That is a much fairer way to say it. Also, of course, it of course comes with the GitHub permissions, elevated GitHub permissions to merge apply settings and so on. So,
right, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, these are repos I'm a little less familiar with.
Yeah, Kotlin is. I only know his repo or his name on Discord.
This is new.
Konak. So we definitely don't want to argue. OAC, I think it's OAC. Anyway, gentleman from South Korea that's been building the Swift and Kotlin libraries frameworks around. So I'm sure he's there, and there's a few other contributors so that he can probably find somebody. Load generator. This came from work done in, I believe, ID Union, and then got transferred over because the person who had worked on it and did a great job with it left the company. Ian had it. We might archive that one, but I can take that one.
Okay.
And then the Akapai, for Akapai tools, the Aries, the Akapai maintainer team will take that one.
Okay.
Why are you typing in gray?
Because that's the way it pasted when I pasted out of the link
Oh.
stuff, and so Colton has been following me up with like a paintbrush, correcting my grayness. So thanks, Colton, for helping out there.
Not a problem.
Yeah, Steve, your hand's up.
Yeah, on some of these, since there's separate repos for different languages, I would be happy to talk to future maintainers about using Unify. That way we can write the core library once using Rust and then create a Unify interface and recompile it for Kotlin, Python, Swift, all these different places. And while I haven't done it myself, I even found a source that claims that they can make it work for C#.NET. So if some of these are lacking maintainers on the separate libraries or for the wrappers, maybe there's a way we can bring all that together and do it maybe once.
Certainly. I know that from the Kotlin, he was writing that as native Kotlin, and I think he had reasons. There's also a Swift twin to that repo. So,
yeah.
Okay, cool.
That's what I mean. I mean, we're using Unify to make that happen. That way we get Rust in all those languages, and it just imports as a C library.
Yes, yeah, but for sure, I think that any involvement that those maintainers would like, I think that would be super useful for.
Okay, thanks.
Excellent. So Stephen, you have some of these, and I can chase some of these as well to try and get these updated, and that way we can make this happen over the next week or two. I may not get it done this week. I have a big DidCon presentation I'm giving Friday morning that's going to suck up the rest of my week, I think, in preparation for. But excellent. Thank you for going through this. Next up is the unqualified DIDs update. There's a handful of things here. The DID rotate protocol did have a comment from Ariel about this in particular. Stephen mentioned before the changes that we made and what that was. This commit added a did doc unsupported, which is different than unresolvable or method unsupported, meaning it's a resolvable did and from a method you support, but when the did doc arrived or was resolved, that it did not contain the sufficient information to actually continue, which means it didn't have a compatible key type or and it also, of course, needs a didcom capable service endpoint. And so signaling that back as part of an error is that useful piece, and that came from Daniel's feedback during his implementation. Other than that, Ariel, we had this question here, and I'm not sure I understand what exactly you meant here. Can you clarify a little?
Yes. No. Yeah. I was. That was a question that arose to me when I was, because I was also implementing this protocol for AFJ, but at the moment we don't support the Peer 4, so it was natural for me to test this rotate protocol with the Peer 1, for instance. So I had to send the DID document. I know that there is also another comment from Stephen, I think, in regards that we are not interested on supporting this older DID methods. But yeah, maybe there is another use case where you are using, you are sending or you're willing to migrate to another did method, which is not resolvable, meaning that it's a kind of peer method, and it does not embed the whole did document within the identifier, like did peer 2 or 4.
In that case, the mechanism still exists to pass the did document along and have it be signed. So we're not removing the ability to attach a did document from the did exchange protocol.
No,
with this.
but I mean, if you want to switch to another method using this protocol, the did rotate.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, if you refresh, you can see my comment, which was basically that we really want to encourage
Well,
moving to did 4, and the only two did methods that I'm aware of are did peer 1 and unqualified dids. And I think we really want to move away from those. So I don't think adding that complexity to this protocol would be a good idea personally.
But do
I get the idea.
Do you think that it's really so complex to add this option of
It just adds weight to that. No, it's not complex. It just adds weight to the
because
protocol
we
in a
already
direction we don't want to go.
Okay.
I mean,
because I think we are also tweaking the data exchange protocol at this moment to add some other fields like the did doc attach, the did rotate attach. So but again, I'm not against not supporting the did doc attachment, but just a comment. Maybe it's needed to, I don't know, clarify a little bit more. I don't know.
So there's two goals with the did rotate protocol. The first one is to solve the unqualified did problem. The second goal is to allow us to add support or transition cleanly to didcom v2 by rotating from a did that doesn't have a didcom v2 endpoint to a didcom or to a did that does have a didcom v2 endpoint. So the second goal, of course, is not very well served by attaching a did document in this manner where you are rotating to it. The first goal could be in the sense that if you're still not yet rotating to or changing to didcom v2, but you are rotating away from unqualified dids, then this would be a worthwhile mechanism to do so. So I understand that, and I definitely have a goal to help us, get off of unqualified dids. And so the open question that I have is for those of you using AFJ that has implemented did peer 1, is there interest, or would that be useful to you to have this? Because I think that's the only sort of subset of the community that would leverage it is those that supported did peer 1.
I think in AFGO they support it as well. They did peer 1.
They don't attend as often, so it's hard to have their voice in the meeting. So AFGO and AFJ. It is weight to the protocol in the sense that this would now be something in the protocol that would need to be ignored post rotation to didcom v2, since didcom v2 won't really allow this. Or in the same way. I mean, it technically could, I guess, but that hasn't been the expected behavior going forward. But so AFGO you may also use this, but within AFJ, are there folks using AFJ that would appreciate the ability to rotate to a did peer 1 did? That's the open question.
Well, it doesn't force us to support the did peer 4 right away. I'm probably thinking on the case, one of the cases that Steven mentioned about changing the mediator or the or the service endpoint, for instance, without the need of changing the peer support. But anyway, I agree that if we are willing to support the peer 4 in a few months or so, it will not matter, right? I don't know what the other guys using AFShay thing, like Yaku, I don't know.
Yeah. I wonder, like, it's hard to say right now if we really will need that. Maybe, but let's say that if I'm using PeerDits right now, it's probably honestly I don't know what's the version, but I think it's the version without the document. Then I guess that I'm not able to. Am I able to migrate to peer version 4 with this did rotation or not?
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Okay.
And that's
Yeah,
and,
then.
yeah, and I'd say that's the goal. I mean, the combination of things. I mean, there are a set of goals, and Sam, I listed a bunch and didn't include DIDCOM 2, so that's another one. But yeah, I mean, the big thing we want to do is migrate to did peer 4, not super necessary for existing connections. But enabling transitioning to DIDCOM v2 and enabling transitioning to did peer 4 are probably the biggest are reasons to do this. And then that ability to change your did doc, to update your key, to change your service endpoint, to use a different mediator, there's one more anyway, but all of those are really good reasons to have this and why we want to do it. It's only did peer 1 and unqualified dids that require the extra attachment.
Just a question mostly for those who are more used to the DIDCOM v2. In DIDCOM v2, we are forced to always send a did that includes all. I mean, when we are rotating the did, we are forced to send the whole did document within the identifier, or there's also a notion of
required
an
to
attachment.
just send a did. There is no notion of an attachment. So you're required to there was special handling, of course, in DIDCOM v1 for attaching a did document at times like during did exchange, and that special handling is gone. And that's why did peer 2 became a thing, was so that you could actually solve that problem. We've discovered, of course, the problems that did peer 2 has, which resulted in our brief discussion about did peer 3, but ultimately we're bypassing that in favor of did peer 4, which solves the lossy problems that plague did peer 2. And so yes,
Okay, no, I was asking because maybe in a future there can be a new did method that will maybe require this, but if it's not allowed in DIDCOM v2, I mean, for instance, suppose we will have a did carry that for some reason will need to send the service endpoints in a separate document, but as you say, if there is no support in DIDCOM v2 to allow that, so I think it will not happen.
If it does need to happen, I think it should be approached new instead of with sort of the legacy approach that motivated its inclusion in DIDCOM v1. So it could potentially, but again, I would like to have I think before we support that, it'd be nice to have a good, clear argument for doing so. My plan, as written, is to have the community coordinated update require support for both did peer 4 and for did rotate. And so if the goal is to align with the community coordinated update, that would require accomplishing both of those tasks. rather than just did rotate itself.
All right.
So here's the comment that I'm going to add. I would prefer not to add support for passing did documents as you describe, but I'm willing to do it if it presents a significant hurdle for the community using did peer 1. I think that we would like to not to, but I also recognize that a change like that could make, could possibly make adoption better. So, so if you wouldn't mind bringing it up in the AFJ community and asking, then we can see. And if it is something that would be very desired, then I will totally add it. If it's something that you're like, well, if we have to do did peer 4 and did rotate for the community coordinated update anyway, then let's just do them both and then not add it, and add the support for did doc passing and rotate.
Okay.
Is that an okay answer?
Yeah.
Okay, and I've got that note in here for the discussion of that. Thank you, Ariel, for that. Jakob.
Yeah, by like using did peer 1, do you mean using in a way that I'm rotating from one did peer 1 to another did peer 1?
Yes.
Do you mean it? Okay.
Yeah. So did peer 1 has its own ability to update, but
Yeah.
this was written by Daniel Hardman, who favors it deprecated in terms of the upcoming carry stuff. And it wasn't implemented elsewhere very soon. It was kind of a little bit of an accident of the timeline that it kind of happened that way. And so this would be rotating from one did to another did, not the internal mechanism to use to update the did peer 1, which I believe was never actually defined. It was sort of described that would happen, but then the protocol was never actually delivered.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I was a bit lost that like, okay, it's there is some problem where you need attachment for rotation, but you don't need it for did peer number 4. So I was a bit confused, but now I understand that if it's like from did peer 1 to did peer to another did peer 1, then obviously you need attachment, but we kind of assume that it's not gonna be useful, and maybe that's the question we should ask on AFJ call. But yeah, to me, I think then it's fine, and I wouldn't add these attachments to the spec in this form.
And I will look forward to your feedback on that to see if it is in fact needed. Okay, good discussion. The next piece is did peer algorithm 4. So this is a PR that takes what Daniel wrote and actually places this as the method 4 in this. This is just a typo correction on method 3 to get the outline to work right. And then here's method 4 that does this. Stephen, I haven't responded to this yet, but this is the idea here, is that this is the spec itself. So definitely take a look at this, please. The link is here in the agenda, and have a review. And then the idea is that we'll merge this in. And the following action against the did peer spec after this has been added will be a change that officially deprecates methods 0 through 3. The documentation will remain there, probably move to an appendix, but it will be marked as deprecated, with did peer 4 being the preferred method of doing this. And so that will come after this, but that's the next step along the way. And that aligns with where we're going as a community in order to make that happen. And the desires of the only one that where the author isn't here of one of the algorithm numbers is Daniel Hardman, who has already expressed his desire that did method 1 be deprecated, or that did peer 1. And so this would fulfill that and deprecate 2 and the unfortunate 3 as well as 0, since that was never really used, since it's the same thing as did key. Patrick, your hand's up.
Yeah, just a question / comment. I don't know, is there some sort of is there gonna be some sort of period for feedback? Even after these merged,
for any changes, because this will get merged. I mean, it seems like it's kind of stuff like there's consensus as to how we're gonna do the Tier 4, but perhaps, once we start to actually framework, start to implement this, they might run into like, oh, this is actually doesn't kind of working out for us. Maybe we'd like to change this. Is there going to be a period of time for additional changes, without necessarily bumping the number to, number 5?
We
Certainly.
definitely don't want to do that. Daniel Bloom, I believe, has done an implementation already, and we would love to have other implementers definitely take a look at that and or implement their own of what it would look like. That would be awesome.
Absolutely. And so the comment period is now, and we're not in a hurry to merge this. But if I could encourage folks that plan on doing this on beginning their efforts sooner rather than later, and then let us know that they're doing them. That can be done with a comment, for example, on this PR that says, "Hey, I'm planning an implementation," and that way we know to look for feedback and to wait as that happens. So we do have one implementation which is helpful, but more implementations would help us discover other quirks that may be really painful in certain languages. Prior to merging this.
Yes,
All right.
actually, I have a possible problem, a potential problem, because I think that Daniel is here, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Because I see that in this method we are doing a hash of a JSON object. I mean the did content, the dot content. But what about the ordering of the fields? It is always the same.
So it's not a hash of the JSON document, it's a hash of the stringified JSON document.
Yes, and the stringified JSON document is always the same in all languages.
No, that's not what I mean. The string is the string is what you're actually taking the hash of.
Okay.
And so because of that, it's the only order that matters is the order that was used when the document was stringified itself.
All right. Okay, that's fine. Okay.
Yeah. That was Daniel's genius doing it that way to prevent exactly the problem that you're describing.
Yeah, that's why I was asking, because I had this problem before.
I think as soon as we figure out like reliable and library built-in canonicalization of JSON, the world's going to end. That's going to be the last thing we have to solve as humanity before we're finished. So yes. If you do plan, or if you are planning an implementation, please leave a comment. And again, props to Daniel for doing an implementation to help inform the document itself, as well as conveniently provide examples that are accurate. And so please do leave a comment on this PR if you are planning an implementation, and that way we can know that that's happening and look for feedback. And there's not really a hurry here. This just has to be done prior to us finalizing and moving on with the community coordinated update. And so that's really the only sort of push there. And really, if you're going to implement the update anyway, you have to have a library to do this. So it's not a bad thing to wait for feedback, so long as we can do that a little bit sooner as opposed to a little bit later. And I hate this, but we're out of time. And I really apologize, particularly for Patrick, who had topics that you wanted to discuss about issues with the credential protocols. Patrick, do you happen to be going to IAW perchance?
No, unfortunately not. We can get touch on this next week. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll put this higher in the agenda so that we definitely hit it next week. That was we talked about all the important things. There's been no significant movement on these other things, on these other aspects of this. And so I very much appreciate the useful discussion today. And Patrick will make sure that your topic is higher on the list so that we hit that next week. Any parting thoughts in the negative 2 minutes that we have left? Awesome. Thank you, folks. Hope your week is a great one.
Thank you.
Thank you.